let's talk about Photoshop. Now, the thing is with Photoshop, I could sit here and pretty much just talk about Photoshop for hours on end, but I'm not going to do that. We're just going to talk right now about getting the starting screen up and what it's going to look like and just basically how to get something going in here. Alright, now when you open Photoshop, it might not look exactly like this. It should be kind of similar though. You've got like all these things over here, and you've got this stuff here. Really, all we're interested in right now is making a new document. I don't want to start from an image. I'm just going to make a new blank document just to kind of get you used to what this all looks like. Now you'll notice that you can't see the menu options that you can normally see on a PC. That's because I'm on a Mac, and right now I'm recording my screen, so it's like that stuff is kind of out of the way right now. I'll fix that in the next one though. Right now it shouldn't be an issue. So I'm going to click on Create New. And again, here's the problem with my screen being too big. Okay, so let's look at some of the stuff here. Right now it says the default Photoshop size is 7 inches by 5 inches at 300 ppi. That is a pretty critical thing there. It did not used to default to this, and this is a good thing for default to. 300 ppi means 300 pixels per inch. Pixels per inch, basically that's like your resolution. That's like how many pixels you can have in there, and it affects like how high quality of an image you can have. This is your usual resolution you want for something to be looking good. What we want to do though, and what we very frequently work at, is instead of 7 inches by 5 inches, I'm going to click on the tab that says print right here at the top, and you'll notice it actually just defaulted right there to letter. So this is the size of our sheet of paper. Even though that's not necessarily the size that we tend to work in all the time, I've always found that it's the best to work on here because it gives you a better perspective of how large or small your images are. So it's like, let's say you find a picture on Google and you bring it into this 8.5 by 11 page, and you notice it's suddenly very, very small on there. That's because that picture wasn't big enough. So we like to use this because it gives you a good perspective of how big your stuff actually is, and also because eventually, hopefully, we'll be able to someday print projects and hang them back up, and this is a good size to work at for that. So notice it says 8.5 by 11 inches. Right now it's a vertical sheet of paper, which we call portrait mode. You could change it to landscape if you wanted to. I'm going to keep mine on portrait. Color mode is on RGB. That's good. We'll talk about RGB versus CMYK a little bit later. Alright, so I just hit create there. And here is what Photoshop looks like by default. Now, I am going to set this up the way that I like it. Now, that is entirely up to you how you want to set up your own workspace, but I'm going to get this to look the way that I'm used to. So basically for me, that means I'm going to be getting rid of these two tabs over here because I rarely use them. So libraries, all I did, let me just like redo that so you can see what I just did. Well, that's not going to work. Well, I just clicked like on the little tab itself and clicked and dragged it out. I'm going to hit that little X. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to click and drag this whole thing out. You can see like where I grabbed that with my mouse, dragged it out, and hit X. Notice how much that just cleaned up my space there by like quite a bit. Alright, a couple other things I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my adjustments instead of properties, because again, rarely do I ever use properties. You can make all these menus larger and smaller as well. So you can like make this guy bigger, you can make this guy smaller, bigger, and you can add in other things. We'll get to that a little bit later. Critical thing that I'm going to do with my workspace that you might want to do with yours, because it'll help me help you, is fix your toolbar. So right now the toolbar is this big long column right here. It's got all these tools on here, and I unfortunately have been using Photoshop for like 20 years now, and in the 20 years of me using it, it looked like this. So let me go back and so you can see that. So there's like a little tiny symbol up here at the top. It looks like a kind of fast forward symbol. If you click on that, it makes the tools like 2 by 2 or two columns rather, instead of just one column. The main thing that I do that for is not just is it easier to kind of see all of them all at once, they're a little bit more chunked up. It makes it so much easier to get to your colors because they're not so small. All right, so this is my workspace. Your default tool is the rectangular marquee, so if you just started like clicking and dragging, all it's going to do is just like make selections, which is not what you want. So if you wanted to say draw something, first off, don't draw on this layer. Photoshop has layers. We will get way more in depth with those in a little bit, but let's say you just want to mess around in here and just doodle. All right, so I'm going to come to my layers. Instead of just drawing on this background, I'm going to make a new layer, which is this little guy right here. Now, it used to be, there we go. Okay, so you can't see it because again, I've made my screen too big. So let's shrink this a little bit. There we go. If I keep my mouse on top of this, it will tell me what all of these tools are. So there's create a new layer right there next to the trash can. So I can make a new layer. And if I grab just like my paintbrush, I can go in here and doodle and do whatever I want to do. I'm going to leave this up to you of what you want to do here. I didn't want this video to be super long. Like I said, I just wanted to show you guys like some initial setting up your document stuff. One thing I will do really quick here though, I'm just going to make a big mess, is come over to my history. And I'm going to actually fix my interface on this as well. So I like having my history open pretty much all the time. Your history sits there and records usually the last 50 things that you have done. As in, it has sat there, and every time I use that brush tool, it recorded me doing it. So instead of me having to do like Control Z for undo, I can use this to go back and forth in time. I can even go back to me just like messing around with that rectangular marquee there. All right, so the brush tool was what I was using here, and that's how you can tell is it says the word brush tool, and every time I sat there and clicked and dragged with that brush tool, it did a new thing. So let's do something else. I'm going to use my eraser now, and notice every time I use this eraser, it shows up over here. All right, brush tool, brush, brush, eraser, erase, erase. Real simple there. All right, I'm just going to cut this one off here because, like I said, I didn't want to get super in depth.